fool for you and the wicked things you do. Been a fool in love, now I'm trying to make it through. Those empty words you said, well, they meant nothing in the end. So I say to you, my friends, I say forget me. Forget me in the morning, forget me when it's late. Forget I ever called your name or gave you my keepsake. Forget I ever loved you, forget I can be good. You would carry on forgetting now, you might forget that we should. It's been a cruel, cruel time and a wicked twist of fate. It's been a tough, tough time, of which I won't forget. Those empty words you said, well, they meant nothing in the end. So I say to you, my friends, I say forget me. Forget me in the morning, forget me when it's late. Forget I ever called your name or gave you my keepsake. Forget I ever loved you, forget I can be good. You carry on forgetting now, you might forget that we should, that we should forget me. Yeah. Been a fool for you and the wicked things you do. I've been a fool in love, now I'm trying to make it through. Those empty words you said, well, they meant nothing in the end. So I say to you, my friends, I say forget me. Forget me in the morning, forget me when it's late. Forget I ever called your name or gave you my keepsake. Forget I ever loved you, forget I can be good. Here we carry on forgetting now, we might forget that we should, that we should. I said forget me. Forget me, please. Oh, thank you. So we're going to do some of our songs for you. Hope that's all right. We are Lynn and Gordon, Elemental in the music sort of side of things, and we are doing a series of songs we thought you'd quite like today, hopefully. They're all our own. We've been writing songs for about 11 years together and performing them, so it's amazing to be able to perform some of our own stuff for you today. And this one never really got a name. It was New Blues, and it's just stayed New Blues for about 6 years, so this is New Blues. The rum is flowing and no one tells lies. Go on and tell me a different story. No need to patronize, 'cause I've been looking to get escaping into a bittersweet surprise. 'Cause I've been crazy, I've been out cold, I've been waking up in couches with no one there to hold, and I've been bitter and so confused. I got my life back when I met you, yeah. I'm looking to get escaping into a bittersweet surprise. Woo! I've been looking to get escaping into a bittersweet surprise. And so you take me for another copy to watch the world go by. You keep on telling me the same old story while I'm staring at the sky. So I've been saving all my money for a bittersweet goodbye. And I've been crazy, I've been out cold, I've been waking up in couches with no one there to hold. And I've been bitter, I've been so confused. I got my life back when I met you. I'm looking to get escaping to a bittersweet surprise. I'm crazy, I've been out cold, I've been waking up on couches, no one there to hold. And I've been bitter and begged too. I got my life back when I met you. Yeah, I'm looking to get escaping to a bittersweet surprise. And here's goodbye. Yeah, I've been looking to get escaping to a bittersweet surprise. Nice. Thank you. So this is about as chilled as it goes for our type of blues, and this is called Keep Me Until You Fade. Blue moon in a waiting sky, saying it's me that you must try to reach. One day there's a big white sun out of here, saying it's me you're trying to reach. Just give me until you fade. Boy who works for all he knows, tells you he dreams of love and home and sleep. One day there's a big green space just out of here, saying come here, it's me you're trying to reach. Just give me until you fade. Tell me a day that you can change. Tell me a life where dreams are made. Tell me a love that takes pain away. Tell me a day that you can change. Tell me a life where dreams are made. Tell me a love that takes pain away. Keep me until you fade. Yeah, keep me until you fade. There's a big blue moon in a waiting sky, saying it's me that you must try to reach. Someday there's a big white sun sitting high, saying it's me you're trying to reach. Just give me until you fade. So tell me a day that you can change. Tell me a life where dreams are made. Tell me a love that takes pain away. Give me until you fade. Tell me a life that you can change. Tell me a day your dreams were made. Tell me a love that takes pain away. Just give me until you fade. Just give me until you fade. Just give me until you fade. Thank you. Okay, so we'll cheer things up again. I didn't realize how sad that song was. Yeah, I know. It was about my papa, who was a singer. So yeah, that's my wee memory of him. So this song, this is our fun song that we do in the set. It's a bit different, and we love it. It's called Blue Hills Rise, and yeah, we performed this at a festival once at the Wicker Man, and it went down really, really well. And we actually thought we need to start doing this more. You know, remember you went to festivals and live music. So yeah, this is all our songs have got really nice memories about lots of nice stuff. So yeah. Hope you enjoy it. Feel free to, cheer dance, stomp, clap, or dance. Get on your feet, yeah. Adds to the ambience. Will the roof stay on? We don't know. Blue hills rise and my heart falls. Still ground all around me now. And pleasure waits for your call. Don't say I didn't want you. Don't say I didn't want you at all. We placed the bet. We took the fall. There's no sound all around me now. No pleasure waits. No nighttime calls. Don't say I didn't want you. Don't say I didn't want you at all. Cause I've been told I'm a fall from grace. I've been around and I've made a case. And I've been told of my changing ways. Don't say I didn't want you at all. Nighttime comes, I'm all alone. There's no sound all around me now. No pleasure waits, no nighttime calls. Don't say I didn't want you. Don't say I didn't want you at all. I've been told of my fall from grace. I've been around, I've made a case. And I've been told of my changing ways. Don't say I didn't want you at all. And I've been told of my fall from grace. I've been around with those changing ways. And I've been told that I made my case. Don't say I didn't want you at all. you. Okay, a couple of more songs for you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this one's called Birdman. A series of men. This was a nickname for one of them called Birdman. Hey, turn it into a song. Yeah, do something good about it. So here we go. Should've known that the man who drew me a bird would fly away. He was here then gone, 'cause I waited so long, one sorry day. And I waited so long for him to come along, what can I say? Should've known that the man who drew me a bird would fly away. He'd fly away. He'd fly away. And so crucify me and cut me down to my knees and tell me that I'm no good for you. Oh, help me please. You want this perfect, well, I'm no good for you. I'm just me. Should've gave you some truths to help improve your mood along the way. You were here then gone, 'cause I waited so long, one sorry day. Yeah, I waited so long for him to come along, what can I say? Should've known that the man who drew me a bird would fly away. He'd fly away. He'd fly away. And so crucify me and cut me down to my knees and tell me that I'm no good for you. Oh, help me please. You want this perfect, well, I got news for you. It's not me. Should've known that the man who drew me a bird would fly away. And I waited so long, what can I say? Should've known that the man who drew me a bird would fly away. He was here then gone, 'cause I waited so long, one sorry day. Yeah, I waited so long, what can I say? Yeah, thank you. That was fun. Okay. This is our last one. Thank you so much for listening. It's just nice to be able to share music in person again and have a real audience as well, which is amazing. I spent most of lockdown every Sunday performing on screen with my dog. I'm pretty sure people tuned in for the dog. And it was a great way to share music, but this is amazing. So this last song we call Long Time. It's our sort of cowboy yeehaw one that we normally do at the end of a night, and people can be dancing and clapping and singing along. So yeah, feel free to do all of the above. I walked through town in my cowboy boots just for this song. Here we go. Yay! Okay. So thanks again. Thanks for having us along here today. Thanks for allowing us to share our music. Thank you. And this is Long Time. Yeehaw. There's a boy who's always on my mind, keeps me up through the night but not by my side. There's a place where the lovers go to fly, take your heart and soul, let your feelings fly. 'Cause we've been waiting for a long, long time. Yeah, we've been waiting for a long, long time. There's a place where we go to just get high, drink all night, then fall outside. And this place where the lovers go to fly, take your heart and soul, let your feelings fly. 'Cause we've been waiting for a long, long time. Yeah, we've been waiting for a long, 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 long time. Yeah, we've been waiting. 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 Yeah, we've been waiting for a long, long time. Yeah, we've been waiting for a long, long time. Yeah, we've been waiting. Yeah, we've been waiting. Yeah, we've been waiting. Yeah, we've been waiting for a long, long time. Yeah, we've been waiting for a long, long time. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you. We've been Elemental.
Welcome to the It's Time to Pivot event as part of the Malin Spotlight series. My name's Helena Fisher and I'm head of the brand team at the Malin Group who's delivering the Spotlight series. Now you can say, why are we running this 2-week series of events, and in particular a community event? As you will all know, 90% of goods and services are transported across the world still by ships, by vessels. And that doesn't look to, unless we radically change the way that we do things, that's going to continue to be the case with consumerism. So we have to look to see how we can change the way that the vessels that are being used, and that's why we feel so passionately about this. As an organisation, since our inception in 1890, everything we do, we have a thirst for innovation and expertise, but that's not enough. So we decided to set up the Malin Spotlight series to create a lasting platform to bring together like-minded individuals across the industry to collaborate and then, most importantly, act to make change. But that even in itself isn't enough. So whilst we've had industry events over the last week and the week coming up, we also wanted to include the local community and the global community and the next generation. So we've had a STEM event and other community events like this for 3 main reasons. First, because we have to hear the stories of the local and global community to understand the impact that climate change is having and our industry is having, so that we ensure that solutions we're coming up with answers those issues. Number 2, because we want to support the passion and skills of the next generation and the skills they'll need to have to take the solutions forward. And number 3, and probably most importantly, so that when communities are moving forward, they hold us to account, they hold industry account to ensure that the solutions that we've mentioned over these 2 weeks of COP, we actually implement, we measure, and we keep refining going forward. So I hope you enjoy today's event and that we continue to collaborate going forward. I should also say there is no planned fires today, so if the fire alarm does go off, calmly walk out, walk along the river, and the muster points in the car park are at the end. As you do know, there are demonstrations planned today, but we think that that shouldn't disrupt us at all. And if you have any concerns, our very friendly but efficient security team are on board. So I hope you enjoy your day.
I'd love a future where people live more simply, where we consume less, and where we learn to share our planet with all the amazing creatures that we have and all the amazing trees and natural beauty that we have on this planet, and where we're not wasting everything that we come across.
I'd love to see a world where renewables are the norm, and cleaner air, greener cities. I think all of those things are achievable, but at the moment, with the way that politics is moving, we're going further, in many ways we're going further away from that aim.
So I'm hoping for a future where we'll be thinking about sustainability a lot more. So this involves a lot of community practice, so working together, looking to invest in innovative green technology. I hope that's the way forward, including marginalised groups such as black and ethnic minorities, hopefully get their voices heard.
I think it's perfectly possible that we could create a very different model, economic social model, where industry operates to serve the needs of human beings equally.
I dream of a systemic change. I dream of a world where we can coexist with nature in equilibrium, a world where we don't live out of it, exploiting it, but we can walk in streets like cities, like forests, communities working together to harvest their food, circular economy, all these ideal concepts which are achievable.
More people being involved in change making. So in making decisions, we don't only have one demographic, we have more demographics, so everyone has an opinion, and everyone can be heard and put their input on what's most impacting them.
So I think planting a lot of trees and reforesting areas like the Pennines in the UK is completely occupied by sheep, but then that could be, turned into a forest area which will be a carbon sink, but then also be an area for tourism. You can have more plant species, and I think that next step where we really, focus on making the relationship between humans and nature more cohesive and, balanced.
My dream for a sustainable future is to see animals that have been brought to near extinction back from the brink.
El futuro sustentable es un futuro donde todos los ciudadanos y ciudadanas sean reconocidos con sus derechos. El principal, la autodeterminación de los pueblos, donde aquellos que están actualmente resistiendo contra el extractivismo puedan finalmente decidir sobre sus bienes comunes en los territorios que habitan.
My dream is a society where individuals can make decisions that fall within the so-called donut economics, so that can stay within the planetary boundaries, but they can also promote social thresholds, so for example education or hospitalization and other social thresholds.
My dream for a more sustainable future, I think a drastically simpler world that we live in. I think the human project has gotten far too complicated.
Preferably, probably one where we don't waste so much resources. I think there's a lot of inefficiency in our system for sake of profit.
Manufacturers and industries should be held liable and not forced, but forced into making these systematic changes to be greener, to use more eco-friendly materials, repurpose.
Where everyone has access to the tools that they need to live a sustainable life. I think there's quite a big wealth disparity within it just now. So I would want equal resources so every country can be as sustainable as possible.
But if we are not taking care of young people who are then going to be the decision makers for the future, then we're gonna end up with, we're gonna, move forward a broken society, whereas we, really need to fix that at the root, I think.
The sustainable world I dream of is a clean world and safe world. The world that I want to see in my future is that people should stop putting trash in the ocean.
You can make the world less smoky by making electricity cars.
My sustainable world is one in which trees should not be cut down.
My sustainable world is to stop making our earth unhappy and unhealthy. We need to do something. We can't keep our mouths shut. We need to help the earth to become a better place and thank the earth for giving us a chance to even be alive.
Use my voice today. Please do. But something's picking it up. That's fine. Thank you. So, is it working? Okay, so it's been a really unusual day here at COP26. You know, like the planet and all the people living on it, we've been tested, and and we have to show our resilience and our sustainability. And I think there's an object lesson here for all of us. But I think it's great we had a wonderful performance by Elemental. Thank you so much. It was really beautiful. And I really want to thank the Malin Group, especially Helena. You are fantastic. The work you did for us, the work you did for the whole series, it's incredible. And this isn't even your profession, right? So thank you so much. I think you've done a fantastic job. So today's program is about it's time to pivot. It's a rallying cry. It's a call to action. And it's really also about Pivot Projects, the group that many of us are members of, which is a global voluntary collaboration that was started at the beginning of COVID with the idea that COVID was a wake-up call, that by seeing a global pandemic, a global disaster, really the first one in my lifetime and in many people's lifetimes, that we can see just how horrible a global disaster can be. And we can sense that when climate change starts to hit hard, it'll make COVID look like child's play. I mean, we know that. So, we've had, in fact, it wasn't just COVID. We've had disaster after disasters, fires, hurricanes, warfare, giant refugee crises, all this kind of stuff. So we know the challenges are here. We know the challenges are coming, and so this group came together with this idea, with this belief that if you combine collective intelligence, systems thinking, and use all sorts of collaboration tools and research tools, including AI-based tools, that you can influence policymakers with your insights, and that you can engage with communities and help them pick the spots where they can make a difference towards sustainability and resilience in their communities. Now I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then I'm actually going to make a little bit of an introduction, set the stage a little more, try not to make it too long. But we have at the first chair, this is Peter Head, one of the founders of Pivot Projects, and really, a round of applause, Pete, for Peter. Yeah, he's a famous bridge builder, famous engineer, famous project manager, famous city planner. Started on the trajectory of sustainability about 10 years ago with Ecological Sequestration Trust and Resilience Brokers, and really was one of the co-founders of Pivot Projects to really take a lot of the ideas that he had and put them to use in a new way. Then we have Damien Costello. Damien is a innovation and disruption expert, which I think isn't disruption the key word of our time. I think it is. So that's a core kind of expertise. Glad to have him here. Thank you. And Amanda Hussain, a lecturer at Brunel University, London, in the Global Challenges program. She's also the CEO of Eastside Youth, which is a program in East London for helping kind of empower and train young people so they can have successful lives. A really wonderful program. And then we have our fantastic James Green. That's applause. We have James Green, who another technical glitch. As if, all right. James Green is a community manager for Resilience Brokers and for Pivot Projects, and a 2020 master's degree in environment development and policy from the University of Sussex. He's also a musician and someone who really likes vinyl, right? Yeah, a vinyl lover. All right. Very good. We have a fantastic panel today. So, just a quick trip down memory lane. Let's see, March 2020, COVID's just starting to hammer the world. It's recognized as a pandemic. On LinkedIn, I see this little alert that Colin Harrison, one of my former colleagues at IBM, is starting an organization, a co-founder, with such a long name that I could not even remember it or repeat it to you. but it was only a name only an engineer could love. But that ultimately turned into Pivot Projects, and that's what we've got now. And just a little bit more, on the framing. We've seen across the street and throughout the streets this week, green zone, blue zone, that, the world, in a sense, came to Glasgow this week with high hopes, high expectations, that, I think we weren't the only ones who were awakened by COVID. I think the world was awakened. And so we have this magnificent opportunity here to really turn the ship, to pivot. But, I think while we hope for national governments, for global governments like the UN to have a positive impact, we can't wait around for them to get it done for us. And also, at the same time, each of us as an individual can't do it. So we've got to, there's somewhere in the middle. And this is where communities are, and this is where communities can come up with new ideas, put them to work, and share them with each other, and possibly help move the needle. So that's what we're all about. So just about a little bit about each of the principles of the group. We call it sometimes collective intelligence, sometimes collaborative intelligence, but the idea is that you need a diversity of points of view and a diversity of expertise to solve these big problems, these big systemic problems that are so complex. And and systems thinking was this fantastic discipline that emerged in the late 20th century. I actually think it's one of the great ideas in the whole history of ideas. The idea that you can't solve a problem within a complex system by burrowing down on it and pretending that it's something that you can deal with in isolation. You really have to understand the bigger picture, understand if you pull the thread here, the sweater comes apart here, that kind of thing. And also, it's a great time for this in a sense. We've got a lot of bad times, but we have all these tremendous tools of collaboration, these online tools, Slack and Zoom and Trello and all these kinds of things, and we're using them. A lot of people are using them, and it enables virtual organizations, virtual collaborations from around the world to work in ways that they never could before. And then the last thing I think it's worth mentioning, artificial intelligence. I mean, a lot of people are worried about the impact of artificial intelligence on the world. You are right to worry. I can tell you as an author who wrote a book about it. But it's also can be a tremendous tool, and I think it's a tremendous tool for research. It can really help you find connections or insights that aren't obvious, that maybe they have multiple points between them. You can connect those dots. So these are the kinds we've been working with. Early on, I think Peter and Colin had the wisdom to kind of set up these work groups. Each, I think there were 23 of them to begin with, each with a leader. The idea that they would do systems thinking, use Kumu visualization maps to view the systems, the topics they were looking at, to do reports that we could share with other people, and then ultimately to do projects with communities. And just a couple of quick, I mean, we've had a tremendous experience. I think you guys would agree. I mean, once we had 3 indigenous grandmothers from around the world, a Canadian, a Hawaiian, and a New Zealander, who basically shared with us indigenous wisdom. And I think that here's another pivot that's happening. Indigenous people have been abused in every possible way, but I think they're actually now starting to be respected. And I think maybe it's subject of the fact that we realize we're in a heap of trouble and we have to look to new places for solutions. And I think people realize that a lot of the indigenous people have really good ideas. Great stuff from Paula, who brought them to us. Another wonderful person, Alan Dean, was kind of our connector. He was the glue that brought people together. A wonderful man, an educator, but kind of outside the system. And he, unfortunately, he passed away of a heart attack a few months ago. Very sad for all of us, but really kind of increased the resolve to carry on in his name. And we've had other wonderful things. Ian Abbott Donnelly has been our Kumu guru. Has worked on wonderful projects, some of them very closely connected and others not. We've had Colin working on regenerative agriculture in the DRC and Nepal, one of the other great projects where they're really solving concrete problems for developing nations and for smallholder farmers. Lots of other stuff. We had a great arts and culture group. Out of it came some of the art that you've seen today, and there'll be some more later. Some great stuff from Tom Rossiter, some great stuff from Michael Dingus, and we've got and a book. I don't want to dwell on it, but I was an embedded journalist in Pivot Projects from the beginning, and out of it came a book, which is The Pivot, Addressing Global Problems Through Local Actions, and you can Google it, and you'll find a way to buy it if you want. All right. So, and I think one of the key insights of Pivot Projects was the fact that we understood the power of storytelling, that storytelling is a technique that we can use to engage all people, not just the elites, not just the highly educated, both to help people kind of invite them to envision a future, to kind of storytell their own future. And you saw a little bit of that in the youth video earlier. And also to realize, oh, that thing I've been doing, that really isn't too sustainable. We've got to change that. So I think there's a great realization. It's time for action. The time for talk is over, except a little more talk today. Greta has done, she says the blah, 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 very effective. We hope that the leaders of the world will actually do things that they're actually sincere, that they're not just making empty promises again. We hope the same thing of businesses, that it's not just a bunch of, greenwashing. Anyway, so I'm going to sit down now and we'll have a little discussion. And at the end, we hope the people in the audience will comment and also ask questions. That'll be great. So I want to start by having Peter, because Peter's the founder, but actually many of the ideas actually came before you were even involved in it. So if you can kind of lay the groundwork of the big ideas and how you developed it, and how that came to the project.
Yes, so thank you very much, Steve. I'd also like to thank the Malin Group for hosting us today as well, because we're so grateful for that. Yes, so let me take you back. I'm going to tell this through stories rather than through facts. So one day in March in 2020, into my inbox pops an email from Colin Harrison to say, COVID looks like it's going to change everything in the world. Shouldn't we do something together? Maybe mobilize some people? And at that point, I was thinking in 2008, when the financial crash happened, the world decided to invest in recovery. And looking at the facts of that, the world invested in more fossil fuels, in more jobs created linked to fossil fuels, and the recovery was a horrible going backwards recovery, because people said they wanted shovel-ready projects. And I remember saying to Colin, the only shovel-ready projects we want are digging in the ground to put trees in. We don't want shovels digging up coal and digging out oil. And still that term is used, shovel-ready, because we want to invest in things quickly. So we thought, wow, if we could bring people together, maybe we could figure out how shovel-ready could be something very different this time around, and we could make a difference. We'd no idea what would happen, and I remember we actually created a little web page on Twitter and other places about what we thought we could do. And as you say, my experience with the Ecological Sequestration Trust and Resilience Brokers, founding and running a charity, we'd been working for almost 10 years on trying to figure out how to help this change to happen. And we figured out that it's got to be collaborative and it's got to be cross-disciplinary. The water people have got to work with the forest people, and the forest people have got to work with the energy people. And we've got to figure out how all this can work so we regenerate the planet at the same time as providing services for everyone, including poor people, at a price they can afford. So no one's left behind and everybody gains. And it's not easy, it's very difficult. So very quickly, as you can see on the screen, a whole lot of people came together from all over the world. And I think we had about 120 people that joined us within about 3 or 4 months, which was extraordinary. And I thought it was a good idea to divide us into disciplines initially, because people are more comfortable in their own disciplines with people they know. But as we go forward, we should gradually join people up and actually start to work in regions around the world and help communities to make the change happen. So that was the vision. At that moment, we had no idea we would still be doing this now. We had no idea how long it would take, whether it would continue, whether there would be enough energy to continue. And one of the big things we did, which you're probably about to ask me, but I'll talk about it now, is we said that we've got to have art and culture, and we've got to have faiths and spirituality in this. Change has to come from the head and the heart. And the heart is to do with the way we feel, our spirit, our spirituality, the music, the things that inspire us in the world have got to be engaged into this change process. And so that was one of the disciplines and one of many. And it enriched us and it changed us, and we went on a journey together, which was very exciting.
Tell us about Jeffrey Newman.
So I already knew Jeffrey Newman, who was a rabbi in North London. He was a rabbi, he's not a rabbi anymore. And Jeffrey helped to pull together the faiths into that. And Jeffrey is one of these people that once he starts on something and he grabs hold of it, he puts huge amounts of energy into it, which he did for quite a while. And he really brought the faith together and made things happen. And one of the wonderful outcomes of pivot projects, which Steve helped to bring about, was looking at rivers and the way rivers change things. So here we are in Glasgow next to the Clyde. The Clyde is a cultural, fundamental, important thing to people in Glasgow and Scotland. So you, Steve, decided we should have a rivers approach to this. And Jeffrey right now has got a rivers project going in North London called the Dollis Brook Project, where all sorts of people are now cleaning up the river and sorting it out, and they're going to build a visitor centre in North London now alongside it. And that's the sort of impact that we've had in pivot projects. People have taken ideas and run off to the outside world with them, and Jeffrey's done that.
I have to tell you one more little thing about the river. So when I decided to make the Rivers Project, we decided people love rivers. If we tell the story of rivers and tell the story of how humans have abused rivers, we can make them recognize that some of the things they do have an impact that they really wouldn't like. But I actually used as the model for the film a river made in 1942, a propaganda film made about the River Clyde that followed it from a trickle in the mountains all the way to down to the harbor and to the sea. So it was really, it all started here, right?
So let me tell you, before we move on, let me tell you one story about why faiths and spirituality and art and culture are so important. I ran a program called Culture Futures at COPs, going right through from COP 14. We had this at every COP, and we invited local people, just like we are today. We invite local people to come, listen to music, listen to poetry, and talk about how we can change the future. So we did this in Poland, and a whole group of people came together, and at the end of the event we let it go quiet, and we said, anyone else want to say anything? And a man at the back of the audience stood up, a bit older than I am now, and he said, there's something I need to say. He said, I'm an ecologist in Poland, and he was 80 years old, and he'd been an ecologist trying to protect the environment in Poland for 80 years. Imagine what he's been through in his life, where Poland's been through occupation and terror and awfulness. And he said, I'm not going to be able to say it. He said that this was the moment in his life that he'd been waiting for. For 80 years, he'd been waiting for this moment. when we were talking about how we could go forward to protect the earth and the environment in a way that he always imagined. And he said to me, it's like my spiritual father talking to me. And that, as you can see how much it affects me, is why I said we have to have art, we have to have music here, we have to have culture, we have to have faiths, because it's how people really relate to change. And people can wait for 80 years for something that we could mobilize to happen. So that's why I did it.
So we talk about the head and the heart, and so Damien, you're going to play the head part now. Yeah. So Damien, he's this disruptive innovation consultant, and he used to do it on behalf of big, mean, evil corporations, and now he's going to the other side. So he's going to talk to you about the cellular economy. All right?
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, when I joined Pivot Projects, I was invited to take over the economics and politics. Colin had a way of inviting you that didn't really get much of an option, but to take over the economics and politics work stream. And when we set out first, maybe we were a little bit cynical, but when we set out first, our goal was to understand just how nasty the world could be in order to sort of prepare our colleagues for the type of pushback that we're going to get when they went to work to improve the world. And we did a lot of that, and we did find a lot of nastiness, believe it or not. And but we found something much more surprising as we started to look through the global economy and how the whole thing was working. And we noticed that there was all of these masses of small initiatives happening all over the world, and they seem to be more and more of them coming online. And we realized that that this was a sleeping giant, that this was a force to be reckoned with if only people could actually see it for themselves, if only people could realize how much they all had in common, and if they could act as a singular entity, if they could impose themselves on the system as a cohesive force, that nothing could stop them. So we likened the capability of, or the scale of this thing to the digital economy, a sort of a nebulous economy with enormous power. So we described this dynamic and its potential economic and political force. We described it as the cellular economy. And the idea of the cellular economy, and one of the reasons we could identify it was going back to what was said a little bit earlier. We used a combination of systems thinking, looking at the bigger picture, and disruptive innovation. And system thinking told us that the global economy, complex systems tend to have fractal patterns that operate at various levels. And we believed that a single industry would be analogous, that the global economy would act and would be changed in the way industries get changed. And disruptive innovation told us how industries get changed, how a dominant group of 1 or 2 or 3 players spend so long being dominant that they forget why they were there in the first place. They forget who they were there to serve. And their arrogance increases, and they believe that their own existence and their own power is more important than the services that they offered. And they begin to underserve their constituency. And that starts to build disquiet. That starts to build anger in the audience. And the audience, the audience start to lose faith, but there's not a lot that they can do about it. And the dominant players know this. In the meantime, people watching from the sides realize that the poor service provides opportunities for people who take people, really care about people, and offer better services. So you start to see, as the giants become more and more bankrupt, in terms of their services, in terms of the value that they offer society, others start to emerge to deliver those services. And we felt the same thing was happening here, and that eventually the capabilities of those swarm of innovators and entrepreneurs, their capabilities improve over time because they're hungry to improve and they're constantly looking to deliver better for the people. In the meantime, the arrogance of the giants have them, first of all, ridiculing, and then until it's too late. And eventually the new model takes over, and one by one customers defect from an old paradigm to a new paradigm in a peaceful transition. And one morning the old guard wakes up and it doesn't have anyone to lead anymore, so it's no longer the leaders. And we felt the same thing. We felt the same thing would happen here. An example of that type of dynamic, we think that was so. We felt that if there was going to be a paradigm shift, if there was going to be a fundamental shift in the global economy, that this was one of the dynamics that would drive it. And when we looked at all of these disparate groups, and even yesterday going around the green zone, it was all of these pockets, but there was no active networking. There was no sense of solidarity. There was no one working to build a voice. And we felt that the first thing that needed to happen for all that was this thing needed a name. And we described it as a circular economy. And this cellular, yeah, I've the cellular economy. And the second thing was the timing of all of this. In a dynamic, in an industry, when an industry change hands, the old guard basically betrays the next generation. And the shift occurs. And I think we could see it, and you mentioned it, Peter, from all the COPs you've been to, that this one feels different, that there's a more elitist, there's more of a split between the leaders and the people. And I think that's an indication that the time has come, that people can't take this any longer. And we saw or believe that this cellular economy, if the world and all of these projects and all of them start moving together and start talking to each other and start speaking in one voice, that voice will deliver a huge component of the next post-pivot, a pivot to a better world. And if the biggest problem with the current system is how centralized it is, if the biggest problem with the current system is how small a number of people, and probably fewer and fewer people every day, have more and more control, that if that was the dynamic, then the alternative was a distributed economy. And the ultimate distributed economy is right out where the agency is with the individuals. So the idea of championing people and telling them that they had agency as consumers and as citizens was a critical component. And by definition, small cells, small groups are less open to corruption and less open to, because of the transparency. So a swarm of smaller cells driving components of the economy is a better thing than a giant monolith. So that was our position, and we felt there was three things that needed to happen. We needed people to recognize that they were part of a cellular economy, all of you, to recognize that you're part of something bigger and to articulate that. We also needed in the corridors of power to say, we're here and we're coming, get on board or get out of the way, because we will replace you. One morning you wake up and we will be the ones who are driving things. And the third thing is we need to actively build these networks. We need to actively build communication platforms to connect these networks together. We need to be conscious about how we pull this whole thing together. And above all, we have to believe that together we are better and stronger, and we have a future that they no longer have. They're bankrupt, they're gone, they just don't know it yet.
No, I think that's right. And one thing we notice is a lot of places are really doing cellular things, but they don't really recognize the power of it, but also the power to kind of replicate it and share it. So I think one of our jobs is to try to say, hey, wait, this thing you're doing, this is powerful. Maybe do, here are a few extra things you might do, or share it with someone else, or we'll tell your story, something like that. So next we'll go, we're kind of moving through different disciplines here. So now we're moving to Mandek, the educator. Now, Mandek works at the university level on these issues of sustainability and empowerment, but also really at the local level in East London, some projects in Colombia and also Liberia. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And, you do a lot of work with children. And I want to know, what's the role of children and young people in making the world more sustainable?
Hi, everyone. I think before we start to talk about what is the role of young people in the conversation, with regards to sustainability, we need to have a fundamental conversation about where do they see themselves, but also where does the system and community see them? So conversations about ownership, conversations about agency, conversations about is their voices, are their opinions, are their ideas valued as inherently being sources of knowledge and truth? And I think in shaping it in that way, we're able to have a conversation about, well, what does sustainability look like? So as Steve said, I teach on the Global Challenges degree at Brunel University, and it's a new program, and part of our philosophy is centered on education for sustainable development. This idea that in order for us to truly start to talk about how do we achieve the sustainable development goals, but also how do we just achieve sustainability, period, we need to ground the learning, the education on the tools, but also the sort of philosophy of empowering young people to be able to create those transformations independently without there being necessarily the sense of your opinions matter because you've got a degree, or your opinions matter because you hold this position, challenging the sort of professional-led models of transformation. So for me, whether it's working with 18, 19, 20-plus-year-olds or working with 6-year-olds in primary school settings, the conversation always comes back to, am I actively listening to what these individuals are saying? But also, how am I ensuring that I'm responding to say that, yes, your idea is fantastic, or tell me more? And I think that we exist in a society and we exist in a culture where young people as a whole, but learners, but also individuals who are frequently marginalized or deprived of engaging in spaces are seen as some kind of blank slate who don't have, who may not necessarily be seen as possessing the wisdom, the knowledge, or experiences to speak up on issues. And for me, my position has always been to radically challenge that. To say, well, no, if we take this sort of like asset-based approach, and often that's used in healthcare, but really the idea that every single human being possesses assets to create transformation, that if the 6-year-old, the 45-year-old, and the 90-year-old all possess some kind of wisdom or knowledge, how is it that we can collectively share that and value that inherently? And that challenges the culture that we exist in, that privileges those who are published, the sort of challenging that knowledge, like fundamentally working towards knowledge equity in order to achieve sustainability.
No, I think that's really powerful. When we've interviewed young people around the city this week, and probably more than 40 or so, and we ask open-ended questions. I think that's really important. You don't direct them. You say, what's your dream of a more sustainable future? And one of the things that we found, and Kathleen found this, was that when you ask that question, some people go directly to the basic quality of life issues, not climate change, but just like safety, security. One of the people said, when we asked, what are you doing about it? He said, well, I want to open a cafe. And when I have my cafe, I want to give food to the homeless and shelter to the homeless. And this is a guy who was working as a clerk. We interviewed him in an alley in kind of the east end of Glasgow kind of thing. So I think one of the keys to getting input from young people is basically to ask them what they want to think about it, what their ideas are. So I think that's really, and that's one of the things that our friend Alan Dean always came back to. He said, listen to learn, and then act. So, you were one of the key people in the education work stream. Talk a little bit about some of the ideas that were discussed and some of the things that might have been of value in that.
Yeah. So the education work stream was, to be fair, a very interesting bunch of individuals. I think we all came with a variety of sort of experiences, but also perceptions of what does it mean to learn, what does it mean to teach, and what does education fundamentally mean. I think there was a common thread, and Alan very much embodied that value that we possess, that in order for there to be change, individuals should be equipped with what I call a toolbox of skills. Rather than teaching individuals to say that in order to solve problem X, you can only use, like a screwdriver, but rather saying any one of the tools in your toolbox may be useful depending on how you look at solving that problem. And so that was that sort of aha moment that, it's not just me who thinks that. There's a whole bunch of other people who also share that value, allowed us to be able to work collaboratively on projects like Listen to Learn and Act, which is grounded on sort of the values that Alan grounded for all of us before his passing. And Listen to Learn and Act is a sort of rallying call, and it's with a colleague and friend, Twain, who is in Spain, Kathleen in Ireland, Teresa in Australia, where the passion is that in order for there to be transformation and true dialogue, we need to not only speak and talk about issues, but actively listen. And how do we enable the sort of creation of spaces, but also opportunities for young people to share their experiences, their opinions on sort of curated topics, whether it's about water, whether it's about friendship, and how is it that those can be actively used in informing change and informing actions, both for the facilitators, but also for the young people themselves, and sharing that from kids in Liberia to Colombia to Thailand and everywhere else in between. So hopefully it's something we can continue to grow.
Yeah, I hope to see that. I mean, I don't have much to do with education, but that idea just lit me on fire, and I hope to see it grow and expand, all that kind of stuff. So, so James jumped right into this organization, and at first was one of the guys who kind of was the administrator. He kind of made the trains run on time, and then he got involved in a very interesting project, one of our collaboratories, and so he's going to talk about this. This is the idea that the kind of global collaboration people can combine with people within a place. Maybe there's a university there, maybe there's the city government, maybe there are nonprofits, and that together they can really get something done by bringing all those different skills. So talk about that, please, James.
Yeah, no, thank you, Steve, and thank you for organising all this and inviting me on the panel to Marlin Group. Super cool and surreal seeing so many friends in the flesh for the first time. So on the stage, wow. Let's try and take it back to the start with my journey with Pivot Projects, which was graduating from University of Sussex, Masters Environment Development and Policy, and January 2020. You come out of university with so many hopes, aspirations. Where you're going to go? Bang, pandemic. Weird. That's a weird scenario. I don't know if that's happened to any of you folks before, but weird. So kind of trying to make sense of the situation, look around for possibilities to further and nurture that energy and that creativity and not let that sort of flame burn out from university. It was unbelievable to come across the Pivot Projects group, and it delivered plus more. Just the systems thinking ethos and complexity theory. Like, wow. It's like coming across a treasure trove. And, you know, not only that, just a group of just really wonderful, magical people who have the patience and time to nurture talent, creativity, connect it up. And that's exactly what I intend to take with a project like the Exeter Living Lab. And, you know, just quickly thanking some of the people on that journey, of course, Mr. Alan Dean, whose carefully timed jokes and jabs pushed me along. This guy had a wicked sense of humour, truly wonderful. Ian Abbott Donnelly for supporting with the Kumu mapping training, which we were able to take the Living Lab. And Kevin Bygate as well. They're just they're very dear friend. And, of course, the founders, Peter, Colin, all wonderful people. And, you know, through my experience with Pivot Projects, supporting the admin, the community manager role, I was offered the amazing opportunity of joining the Resilience Brokers team with some good friends and now dear colleagues. And I was thrown straight into the Exeter Living Lab, a project that was in the works. It was talked about in whispers through the first year of Pivot Projects. And yeah, it was a baptism of fire, actually, being the first role out of university. And there was in a group with academics, stakeholders across the Exeter system, and some fierce personalities that are just wonderful minds. And there I am. And feeling a little bit out of my depth was really the perfect situation to develop the skill of listening with empathy and not going into a project and being assertive, because maybe the world's full of too many assertive blokes. I don't know. People may want to disagree on that, but maybe it is. So I don't want to be another one of those. So I'm going to listen with empathy. And what we have in Exeter is a virtual space which connects academics from the university, the Pivot Projects global team, all those experts, and local stakeholders, and master students who are part of the Global Studies course of the GSI, which is Global Systems Institute. And one of those is Kai, who's in the audience today, you know, now a good friend who we met through that project. And you know, connecting with Kai through Exeter Living Lab, she joined Pivot Projects and set up urban psychology work streams. So truly hats off to you for really bringing a new layer to Pivot Projects and the new energy. It was pretty fascinating. But yeah, in Exeter, we're trying to create that virtual space of bringing all those pieces together and looking at the Exeter system, using the Kumu mapping approach, as you can see on the screen, to show the interdependencies, visualize that system through Kumu. And one of the great quotes or great ideas from my course at university for my master's was the idea of a pluriverse of meaning. I can't remember who said that. It might have been Walter Mignolo or Escobar. I can't recall. But the pluriverse of meaning. And I think I'm able to see that through Pivot Projects, the Exeter Living Lab, the energy that's being created there, bringing the Pivot Project system complex theory approach, bringing in the spirituality, the arts and culture, all these things, and seeing how they're interdependent, and looking at something like the Exeter system and seeing where that creativity lies in a system, which groups are looking for net zero, which are passionate, who have the energy, the creativity, the desire to make a change, because they're out there. Those groups in every region, in every city, in every community, those folks are out there. But bringing them together, that's where we're trying to step in. I think one member of the group, David Pension, he described us. We're not trying to be the vanguards of change. We're just trying to create the mechanisms to bring that energy together and stitch it into some beautiful mosaic where we're not homogenizing it either. It's a pluriverse of meaning. So I could go on about this, but yeah, it's an amazing project, and you know, truly hats off to University of Exeter, Global Systems Institute, those amazing academics and top-tier research. It's awesome.
No, I think that's a great example of the kind of engagement that we've talked about. And I look around, a lot of people individually, they recycle, they bicycle a lot, they're very conscious of the kind of footprint they have, the negative footprint, but they don't know how to get engaged with others. And I think that that's the thing that people are looking for now. And if we could have these living labs, in every city, around the world, it would be a tremendous thing. And I think one of the things we should look at is, well, what do we do? How do we make this replicate? That kind of thing. So I wanted to ask, we've gone down the row here, but I kind of want to open it up a little, just be more of a free discussion. So when you guys look back on this experience, what do you think were some of the most either fascinating experiences or ideas that came out of it? I'm going to tell one on Damien, actually. When Damien first started talking about the global economy, he had a very long slideshow, and I think the fourth slide was a picture of a house burning down, and his question was, should we just burn down the house, or is there an alternative? And when I first went to his meetings, I said, I think he's going to say we should just burn down the house. But no, he went on to a much more responsible path, ultimately. So, and other ideas? Yeah.
One thing that struck me about it was the breadth of people and experience.
Yeah.
And to my utter surprise, I found myself hugely drawn to the faiths group, which under no circumstances previously that I had no indication that was going to happen. The arts and the other aspects always, and Kai and urban psychology and all of these things, and the softer side of it was always my preference. But the idea that it put me in touch with wonderful people like Jeffrey and people who I would never have come across in life, and that I think is, for me, is the biggest, particularly sort of sitting in the west of Ireland in isolation, to be able to make connections with fabulous people all over the world. That was an absolute gift.
Should I give you an example, which is a relatively recent discovery? I, with others, got deeply involved in regeneration of agriculture, and I think we mentioned it earlier. And we've got young people in Goma in DRC in Africa who got involved in this, who went through the volcanic eruption in Goma through this story and had to flee their houses and came back, but they still stayed online and pivot projects through all that process, just to give you an example of what happens. But anyway, we've been working in soil improvement and agriculture and discovered agrivoltaics. Agrivoltaics is putting photovoltaic panels onto farmers' fields, but putting them up at a level where you can still farm underneath. And what happens is the panels actually stop evaporation of the water in the summer, so actually you don't need as much water and the crops grow better. But at the same time, you get the revenue from the panels. And we've discovered in the last few months that the amount of growing area per capita in the UK is 0.6 hectares per person. The amount in China is 0.5 hectares per person. So UK and China has pretty similar amounts of land available. If you look at electric vehicles, the number of cars per household is roughly the same. So there's a ratio that you can work out between the two. And if you have 1% of the land with agrivoltaics in UK and China, it will power all the electric vehicles that will come onto the roads in 2050. And that's the sort of thing that Pivot Projects does. It's actually looking at the system and saying, wow, there's something in it for everyone here, and this can actually make things happen. So that's just an example that we don't think anyone else has realized yet.
I think you look. I was going to pitch it to you. remember when, after Alan died, the group from, where was it? There was a group of children who made goodbye videos to him and thank you videos. I can't remember. Was that your project? Okay.
That was Alan.
Oh, okay. That was Alan's project. But yeah,
I can talk about it.
We'll go to you next. But yeah, tell about that.
Yeah. So one of the schools that Alan was working with was a school in Nigeria that you've seen the kids from in the introductory video, and Alan created a real bond with those kids. They actually loved him and he loved them. And when he died, the class was so devastated, and the teacher was devastated, that they'd lost him because he was a dear friend and he was helping them. They all did drawings of him, and they all came on camera and said how much they missed him and how much they loved him. And they made up a song and sang it. And we played it at a series of events, and for me it was a really moving moment to see what Pivot Projects has done through the individuals that we have. But without Pivot Projects, Alan would never have actually been in touch with the school in Nigeria. So it's just an illustration of how the heart and the head work together. Really.
Yeah. Amplification too.
I had this conversation recently, actually, in preparing to come here. I tell people that Pivot Projects came at the right time for me. So in my teaching at the university, I talk about systems thinking. I try to engage my students, because it's a transdisciplinary program, of this is what the world could look like. This is all the things you could work towards and achieving, but nothing concrete. It's a new degree. I don't know how to explain to anyone that there is a space for you to talk about your passion in planetary health, but also in international security, but somehow you're interested in the arts. And then, having been involved in Pivot Projects, I was able to demonstrate to students the sense of this sort of transdisciplinary approach, the application of systems thinking, the utilization of design thinking in that process of being able to solve these complex global challenges exists. And here's how. And so currently, the final year students do a module with me called Enterprise, where they address a global challenge presented by organizations, individuals, institutions. And one of the groups is working with somebody who I met through Pivot Projects, and they're working on, I think, data and usage, but also like how is it that young people can be encouraged to discuss data and how valuable their data is. And seeing the students in the class after speaking with this person be excited and just in awe of the opportunity to say that I am able to draw in my passions from every which way into something tangible is empowering for me as an educator, but also inspiring for me as somebody who is keen to see change happen in my lifetime.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, amazing. Yeah. I think the core of it for me is the friendships made, without doubt. When you strip everything back, those friendships is what really can bring about the change. You know, we have the tools, we have the approaches, but the friendships made within Pivot Projects across countries, across generations, it's absolutely fascinating. And I deeply believe that's where it begins, and if we can bring that to the communities and to the projects as well, that energy, that joy, that creativity, that laughter, I just think that would be powerful, and it really is deep in Pivot Projects. We don't just meet online and have intelligent conversations or whatever. We really do laugh, and we Damien and I spent yesterday having amazing conversations, meeting amazing people, and then at the end of the day we fell into the pub. A great pub, really good, and the others joined. But you know, we're just talking nonsense for an hour and laughing, and you just think, I definitely want to bring about great change with this person and these people when you are laughing like that and sharing joy and emotions and passions. So the friendships are absolutely mandatory for change. So, yeah.
Do you have an anecdote, sir?
I'd like to pick up on something Deck said about it coming at the right time, and I think COVID probably made it the right time for a lot of us anyway. But I was at a crisis point, realizing I was on the wrong side in preventing the pivot that I desperately wanted to see. But that was a time. This is a milestone for us. This was something that was always on the cards from when we started. And I think what we need to do is send out an invite that we now need another surge. We need another wave of energy and youth, and not academics. That we need smart people and funny people, and but just people who want to be involved in something bigger than themselves, something that is trying to do some real good in the world. And I think it's as we come back from this, it's the perfect time for other people to come into our fold. Right? And we would be most welcoming, and I would love to see another wave of friends emerge after this.
That's a cool thing you said about academics. When I first got into this, I thought there'd be a lot of academics, but it turned out it's totally unsuitable to most academics who want to just do a bunch of research of their own and publish it. Who wants to collaborate, right? So it wasn't a good fit, except with people like Mendek, of course, who are activist academics. So, hey, I wanted to know, and we're going to open it up to anybody on the floor too. I mean, here we are sitting right across the Clyde River, the beautiful Clyde River, from COP26. You know, do you have a message for the people over there? Peter, you wrote a wonderful blog post. It was published on Monday, and I urge people to read it. What's your message to the leaders of the world?
Yeah, I think my message is, first of all, we understand that governments, local and national governments, have no money anymore. We have to be realistic. COVID has taken money from governments, and they have far less money, and they have to repay the money they borrowed just to deal with the pandemic. So the message is, don't worry about it. Just move the subsidies you're putting into fossil fuels and into coal and into all this stuff. These huge amounts of money you're putting in, just transition it across into renewable energy. It doesn't cost anything to do that. You just move it across, and the private sector will then step in and make it all happen, because renewable energy is a lot cheaper than all of that. The capital cost is much lower. You can decentralize it, you can make it local, local people can own it. So actually all you need to do is set up policies to transition and move that money across, and change will happen because the private sector will drive it and energize it, and farmers will change, and all these other things will happen. So you don't have to find huge amounts of money, but at the same time, those that have more money than developing countries need to help the developing countries to actually do it. Not actually fund the work, but simply help them to understand how to make the same process happen. So teach and help them and train them. But I don't think they need the money to do projects, because the private sector will bring that.
Any other messages for the leaders of the world?
Keep going in order. I was going to disrupt the order. I think they should just keep it up. I think keep doing what they're doing, because we're realizing more and more clear how little those in power have to offer greater society, and sooner or later it will become intolerable. And I'm being facetious in that. We can't afford we can't afford that. But I think they have to stop supporting bankrupt systems like the fossil fuel industry, because if they don't, they will be just reinforcing how bankrupt they are as an institution, and this groundswell that we talked about, or I spoke about previously, it will replace them. It will come up with other ways of doing things. I think one of the decentralization is the big story here, going from a command and control centralized hierarchy, decentralizing. And I think you see it across the world, how cities have been far more effective than countries in dealing with all of these issues that we're talking about. And that's one step down. I think it gets better every step down we go down through the system.
I've been trying to rack my brain as everyone's been speaking of how to word what I am about to say. My message is fear the people. I think that it is only a matter of time before the citizens, people globally, young, old, migrants, indigenous communities, those who have been actively deprived of their rights, will get fed up. And I think that recognizing that, or states, those in positions of elected power are there because of the people. You can't be there any longer if the people aren't with you anymore. And so I think is to take heed of that.
Yeah, and if I could just add that at this very moment, we can hear the helicopter over Glasgow. Right. And streets all over the world at this very moment are full of people who want this change to happen. And we need to enable them to get involved in it.
Yeah, the message is you are losing your grip. Change your approach.
James, you got a message?
I sure do, yeah. So to quote one of my favorite historical figures, writers, thinkers, creatives, Joe Strummer from The Clash, of course. He said, "Without people, you're nothing." And you know, you can have your hard numbers, your pledges, your writings, and but people are in the center of that, and we got to, you know, without people, you're nothing. Without that connection, you're nothing, because, you know, meaning, joy, love is a function of connectivity. Don't forget the people.
You know, one thing that I discovered, or maybe it was just reinforced this week, when we interviewed all these young people, relatively wide diversity, not as diverse as we wanted to get, because that's hard. But, you know, we talked to a lot of people. A few of them were kind of the climate activists, people who have been in the street, but a lot of them were just students or workers. And I have a message for the governments and especially businesses of the world. They are paying attention and they are pissed. And this whole kind of, you've got easy answer that capitalism is going to solve our problems, which I think, you know, for a couple of decades that was a pretty strong thing. Well, these people do not believe that. What I'm hearing is the capitalism as it's practiced today is just incompatible with sustainability, maybe with democracy, and unless it changes, we're going to have some things are going to get much worse, and it's not just climate change. So, you know, I think that's a message that people should get. The people in the streets right now, the sun came out a moment ago, so 100,000 people are hopefully drying off a little bit, but their message has to be heard. So are there any questions, or anybody else have a manifesto they want to say from the audience or anything like that? Kai, how about you? Well, wait, you need a
So my question is for like Mandek and then possibly anybody else. So thinking about how young people can get involved, and like obviously there are people marching on the streets now and yesterday. It's not necessarily that young people need help, right? Mm-hmm. They are the ones driving change. What is it that we can offer that's not on the table right now? And how is Pivot sort of fulfilling that unmet need, especially when it comes to enabling, empowering, and connecting young people to make the change that we need to see?
So it's a question, what can be done to enable that, the further amplification of the voices of young people? I think first and foremost is the normalization of radical young people. I think that there's this acceptability of like, yes, you can protest and yes, you should speak your mind. But truly, when we think about the culture, the systems that young people are engaging within, it narrows them down. It very much puts them in you need to act in a particular way. You can only speak up in particular instances. Your opinions are valued under these throughout these particular channels. And so in order to enable that change to happen, I think first and foremost is this recognition of power that gatekeepers possess. For me, in my teaching, one of the first things I do in my classroom, besides like changing the layout, is to say that this is not going to be a one direction learning opportunity. In order for this to be truly valuable, you need to be able to recognize, but also feel safe that your ideas matter now, and not when you have a degree in your hand, or not when you have 5 years of experience under your belt, but that you matter now. And I think one story I think about is that when I was younger, I thought I'd write a letter to George W. Bush, and somehow he would read it, and then all the changes would happen. And I remember feeling so confident when I wrote that letter and feeling like, you know what, I'm really speaking from the heart. I'm really upset about what's going on. And then losing that sort of confidence that I had, because I was in spaces where my ideas were told like, oh, that's nice, or like, oh, that's a really good idea, and nothing would come out of it. And I needed somebody who would support me in saying, let's write to the newspaper, let's do this. You didn't get a response back from George W. Bush, but that's okay. We can write to the Toronto Star, you know? And it's enabling those avenues for that to happen. And so we're actively utilizing your networks, actively utilizing the connections, opportunities you have to enable young people to be able to amplify their voices, because they have voices. It's just about making it louder so that everyone else can hear them.
You use the word normalizing, and I'd say celebrating rather than even normalizing. James and I had a conversation, and I think we're quite similar yesterday. We're quite similar in our views about certain things. But I graduated in the early 90s. And that period between the fall of the wall and 9/11 is the absolute pinnacle, the heyday of neoliberalism. It could do nothing wrong. I was under enormous pressure. I just wasn't capable of doing it, but I was under enormous pressure to conform and to fit in and to find my box and to get into my box, right? And that conforming, I think for your generation and that conforming is the problem. So any pressure that you may feel to conform, realize that's the evil left in this space. I couldn't conform, thankfully. I'm still here disrupting, looking to burn things down. But nobody should be looking for a box to get into right now. Nobody should accept the limitations that those guys over there want to put on us.
Yeah. You know, we were just being here, there are these exclusionary zones, the blue zone, the green zone. We're outside, we're on the fringe. And it occurred to me that I've been a proud part of the counterculture since 1968. Feels really good right now. Any other comments or questions from anybody? Chris.
I'm in, Steve. Yeah, thanks. That's been an absolutely fascinating conversation, really, really stimulating. But I guess my question is, what do I do next? Where do I go with it?
Well, you could join Pivot Projects if you have any spare cycles and help us figure out what our next step is. Because, you know, we've kind of gone along a path. It's a very, you know, it was kind of set up with some ideas and a little bit of structure, and then it kind of found its way. And a lot of the activity has actually been by individuals kind of inspired by it, taking some lessons and going out into their community. But I think right now we're kind of at this pivot point within pivot of saying, well, how can we take what we've learned so far and who we have and go to the next step? And I think in the coming weeks we're actually going to be having some meetings about that. Well, what are the obvious next steps for us? And the other thing I would say is, pivot projects led me out into the world, a global community, and then it led me back to my community. It led me back to the river that runs by my house and asking questions about it and meeting people and engaging with them. And I think, that's what the River Project is about. But I think, you look back at your community here, you have your business community, you have your friends, your family. Is there a project that's either already underway or that you and some friends could cook up that would be very powerful? Do you know about after the pandemic? In Glasgow, there is an organization called After the Pandemic, started at the beginning of COVID, driven by actually some people in a design company called Lateral North, some design thinkers. And they started this project and go to the website. There is so much going on in this town. In fact, it's a little bit like Pivot's projects, except local. It's got, the arts, it's got sciences, it's got design, it has activism of all kinds. So there are a few places to start.
Got all the answers, Steve. Cheers.
Kathleen. Wait.
Oh, I have a question for Peter. He's a titular head of many things with lots and lots of experience. I was wondering, one thing I picked up from doing all the interviews with the kids was how they, in their life, taking little steps to reinforce the philosophies that they want to see to fruition. And I'm wondering, what do you do in your life to do that?
Sure, thanks, Kathleen. The first thing is I've been a vegetarian for 40 years, and I'm very healthy. I initially did it for health reasons, but I'm very glad I did now for all sorts of other reasons. So I've been a vegetarian for a very long time, number one. Secondly, all the energy that we use as a family comes from renewable resources. So we buy it from Ecotricity and we buy it from other places, and we have solar panels. And I've driven an electric car for 10 years now. I was one of the first users of an electric car, so I haven't been polluting the planet with electric cars. I stopped flying in Europe 3 years ago, and I was asked by the UN to go and speak at a conference in Zagreb in Croatia. And I went on an overnight sleeper train, which was a fantastic experience to realize you can go to Zagreb and leave London at 9 in the morning and be there the following morning for the conference. So actually, I'm doing that. And we do lots of other things too. But those are some examples, which means that we have a pretty low carbon footprint, really, as a family. The other thing, we do have a family. We have a family tree planting program as a complete family. My two children, their families, and I think we've funded and planting around 1,000 trees in the last year. So we're doing that as well. So we're doing quite a lot.
Any other questions or comments?
Can I ask, when do you think, like you're saying about the youth, or not actually youth, everyone that's, you said, pissed off, amplifying them, and you mentioned, Peter, you think the private sector will take that on board. When do you think that tipping point is? Because I think a lot of our experience, they're never the two shall meet. There are the blue zone and the green zone activities, but it is closed. And yeah, there's people out on the street, and you see that passion and energy. But when will that, do you think, be enough that it tips over to the other side?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I've been an innovator most of my life, so I've been used to this cycle of innovation. So initially, I've done about 6 or 7 big innovations in different areas. And I was always about 15 years ahead of the mainstreaming of what I was trying to make happen. And that's too far behind or ahead in a way. But I've noticed over the last couple of years that that's really squashing up now. And I think anything that we all do as individuals now can be mainstream within 5 years, probably, which is quite short for anybody to be involved. So basically, this is now a situation, as I think we've illustrated, where a tipping point is coming for change, where things are really happening much more quickly than they have done before. And therefore, mobilizing the private sector means that things can happen pretty quickly. So if for someone who's 13 listening to this, you know, by the time you're 18, something really mainstream could happen as a result of you getting involved in something. And if you're 20, it's only 25. Whereas for me, originally, 20, it would be 35, which is a completely different ballgame. So I think in reality, the message to young people is that do get involved in these things now, because things will happen pretty quickly, and you can really help make change happen. And the final thing I'd like to say is that the mobilization of the capital is actually there now. The money's there, and you've probably heard it at COP. It isn't 170 trillion, but it's probably 20% of that is around. The problem is we don't have the projects and the bankable, financeable propositions for that money to flow. And so Pivot Projects is really there to help people develop those quickly. And that's really the bit that's missing at the moment, is the system solutions and the financeable deals, which you know as a company are so important. And it's helping to get those in place. And that's where young people really should be focused and drawn in to making get some projects so that they can be financed, and then they will be financed now, as long as they got the right characteristics.
I was going to say that, so in one of the classes that I teach, I mentioned the Millennium Development Goals, and I was like, there once upon a time was a Millennium Development Goals, but now we've got Sustainable Development Goals, and I never want to be in a position where I'm talking about Development Goal XXX. And I think what we have seen globally as a society is that a crisis on human life needs to happen in order for there to be change, whether we think about the Black Lives Movement or the Arab Springs. And I don't want that to be what allows the private sector or even governments to be able to facilitate or mobilize change at that system structural level. And I think part of what we need to be able to cultivate as a society, but also as Peter mentioned, that within the industry is for there, as Damien puts it, disruptors within there, those internally who are empowered enough, possess the space and the power to be able to fundamentally challenge how we're going. So that is what pushes us faster, rather than waiting for some god-awful crisis to happen that makes us think, you know what, we should really be doing something about this now.
I have a disruptor story for you. We were over at Strathclyde this week. We were in the Strath Union. And there were lots of activities going on there, and we noticed, 15, 20 kids around little tables, and maybe 5 years old, 6 years old. They had little T-shirts on that said "disruptor" on the back, and it was like, yeah, do that. And it was just it was so bold, It wasn't hostile, but it was definitely, activist and empowering. So it was a beautiful thing to see. Yeah. Any other questions or comments from anybody? Do you have a question? You do. I misinterpreted. You're even older. Do you have a question? No. Okay. All right. Well, Kai does.
It's a question about the Living Lab. So it's been in about the swings for about a year and a half. So where do you see it growing and developing in the near future?
Yeah, thanks. Cheers, Kai. I think, we have created a mechanism within the Living Lab and with Pivot Projects, with the systems mapping approach. And I think, I really do believe it adds value, and that visualization will connect people. So it'd be cool to expand it around the southwest region, Devon, with other universities also. They have quite interesting coalitions. There's a GW4 Alliance, there's the Southwest Infrastructure Partnership. We're in conversations with them, so hopefully that might expand it in the region, but also take it to other areas in the UK as well. Why stop in the Southwest and take it other areas beyond it? It is scalable. It is scalable. Although we're looking at the Exeter system, that mechanism and approach is scalable, so hopefully we can take it to other universities, other areas. Hopefully one day this wonderful city as well. Why not? Because the energy here is tangible. So yeah.
So I think we'll wrap up now. Another question. Microphone to the.
Quite good at
no. You got a microphone.
You need a microphone?
Yeah, you need a microphone.
I'm listening fascinated to all that's been said.
Closer to your mouth.
Also, the enthusiasm. But I'm old, and I want just to leave you with a thought. You're basically saying that people democracy has to overcome the failed political democracy. And to do that, you're appealing to business. It's the scale of the possibility and the problem that really bothers me at my age, because I know I'm not going to see any conclusion. And I just wonder how that enormous scale of a challenge is going to be squeezed or squashed, as somebody used that word, into the time scale that we have left. And is there any encouragement you can give to an old cynic that might make him go home happy and sleep more easily tonight?
Well,
I have one anecdote that might help with this. Tony Seba is one of these people who talk about energy and does the maths on energy, and he's well worth looking into. But he has a slide from 1901 in New York in the, I think it's the Easter Parade, and it's got the first automobile in New York in 1901. And he has another slide from 11, might be 13, with the last horse. So when the tipping point occurs and change starts, it happens really, really quickly. The positive feedback loops, which we haven't triggered yet, whip up a whirlwind, and I think it's Microsoft, Bill Gates, that says we always overestimate what we'll achieve in 2 years and underestimate what we'll achieve in 10. By 2030, all this talk about these targets, the world will be unrecognizable. In a way, it'll be unrecognizable to anybody in this room. In 5 years' time, the world will be unrecognizable.
Yeah, and the other thing is the huge disruption that's already happened in all these industries. And so they're all ready. So if we take renewable energy, it's forecast in the next 2 years that wind energy cost will halve in the next 2 years, because people have been developing new technologies with bigger blades and everything. And once they're rolled out, it's going to halve in the next 2 years. So there's absolutely no question that investing in renewables is so much cheaper and more effective than anything else. And once that happens, and we can get it from the land, we can get it from the sea, we can get it from biodigestion, which is also coming along, the disruption will be phenomenal and very, very fast indeed. And the great thing about it is decentralized, it's local. You don't need a centralized power station, and the grid is in place to service that. And in Africa, one single building in a village can have a solar roof and power all the village's needs for clean water and everything else, which is another thing we're doing. So actually these things are just on the verge of being rolled out, which is really exciting.
I was just going to say, it's they both touch on, but it's looking at the scale of how we're viewing solutions. or how we're seeing problems being solved. And I think there are everyday transformations and everyday changes that are happening, but they're perhaps not at the level that we want it to be now, right, for the globally, but the appreciation of the fact that, so one of the groups of students that I worked with last year embedded solar panels in schools that were led by the Gambian Teachers Union, in the lower region of Gambia with the Steve Sinnott Foundation. And these are students who are like up in Uxbridge in West London doing this as part of their degree. And this is a transformation that was being able to happen on the ground in real life that impacted the sort of the access to technology, the access to learning of dozens of children. And I think that is something that we can applaud. But on a larger scale, has that solved the issue of connectivity and the issue of educational access in the entire region? No, but it's impacted those young people. And how is it that we can scale that up? And it's appreciation for scale is my comment, because I often, like you, I'm like, Ari, what's going to happen tomorrow, or like, how are we going to reach this goals? But it gives me great sort of appreciation to realize that every day someone's doing something, and slowly we'll get to that point where everything fits together.
So I think we will wrap up now. One thing I want to mention is I'm gonna ask Peter to kind of give the benediction here, because he often did this at Pivot Projects for our meetings. But I want to say we're going to run a little 5-minute video right after that shows the young people that we talked to talking about what are they doing about it. So I think it's very inspiring. We'll see that. Also, if I can find them, I brought 10 books, and I'm going to put them out on the table. And the first 10 people who want a free book, it'll be yours, and I'll sign it if you want me to do that. So all I have to do is find them. I don't know where. Oh, there we go. Anyway, so I'll hand it over to you, Peter, for the final say.
Yeah, thanks. I don't really want to say a huge amount, because I think we've together said a huge amount, and hopefully you got an idea of this. So let me try and summarize. We created Pivot Projects without any expectation of whether it could achieve anything. And every day that's gone by, the impact and outreach that it's having is, we have no idea, but I think we suspect that it's having a very big impact. And we could give you loads of examples of that. And that's not us. That's because we've created a collaborative model of multidisciplinary people working together and actually figuring out how to solve problems. And it is a model for how the world can actually do things, we think now. And I want to finish just recognizing what we heard. The last song we heard was Waiting. We've been waiting to meet each other. And yes, last night, 8 of us who hadn't met physically before, who've been working together in Pivot Projects, all had dinner together. And it's the first time in my life, 8 people coming to dinner. There was no hierarchy. There was no one talking too much. We were just vibrantly communicating with each other around a dinner table, sharing a meal together, and actually moving towards today. And that way of the human spirit being able to embrace complexity and resolve and solve things and work together in a very happy and purposeful way, I think has a very, very deep and profound meaning for those of us who've worked in business. And although in families you have hierarchies, in business you have hierarchies, but actually when communities come together in this way that you don't, and actually I think you can achieve a lot. So I think the learning in Pivot Projects is to do with how the head and the heart can come together in collaborative teams to make more change happen than you could ever imagine would be possible in a voluntary way with very little time spent each week, but actually making a change happen. So I think we've discovered something together which is very profound, I think.
Do.
At the moment, I'm the sustainability officer at my university. So we're looking to do things on campus, such as making campus a little bit more green, looking to potentially increase biodiversity on campus.
I'm leading a students' union down in the south of England, where we've pledged net zero by 2050, and where we're encouraging our students to engage in behaviours that are less wasteful and more sustainable.
Obviously, I'm cutting down on plastic waste recycling, and but I think there's still a lot more that we can learn about how to be more sustainable. But I think we also need to put pressure on big companies and governments to make bigger changes.
Everyone needs to work collaboratively together and be open and honest about the goals that they have and the things that we need to do. And if there's other people that need more help than others, we need to make sure that that is done. And the main way to do that is to communicate, be open and honest. And I think that needs to really start now.
I've tried to work on a few projects that extend towards other people. So one thing I've made is a carbon footprint calculator that I've it's going through my school now, and then everybody in the school uses it and tries to work us towards carbon neutrality.
If myself, I will do I will persuade the people, teach them, learn them, telling them this is the real stuff.
So I try to do volunteering on Sundays, for example, to fight against food waste, or I'm involved with the climate fresk here at COP26 to educate people about the IPCC report. And on the other side, I'm working more at a kind of collective level. So we're trying, for example, to find a better way to define what is a green investment. For example, if you want to move investments from where they are now to a greener future.
It is one of the big reasons why I got into engineering, because there's so much that can be done that so many people don't seem to be doing for one reason or the other, whether it be profit or it affects a politician's pay rise in a company he owns shares in or something like that.
As a designer, I'm always putting sustainability as one of my first considerations, and I am trying to put it forward and almost analyse it in the bigger companies that we all know and love, Apple, Dyson, places like this.
Actualmente incido a nivel político en el Perú. Soy representante en la Comisión Nacional de Cambio Climático. Desde allí fiscalizamos y también proponemos políticas públicas. En la actualidad he diseñado una ordenanza para incluir a los jóvenes dentro de la gobernanza de gestión climática a nivel local de las instancias regionales.
For me personally, I'm a vegan, work at a vegan cafe. All our food is sort of we try and minimize use of animal products. We use biodegradable items throughout. So things like that. I don't drive. I cycle. I walk. And I would say I try and minimize my traveling.
I just open my cafe and open a house for homeless people. Just come in and free drinks or cake or anything, cup of tea.
I'm a teacher, so I probably will use my role there to teach children about how to be sustainable, teach them about how to be socially active, teach them how they can get involved in things.
There's this thing called the Sustainathon, which me and a group of friends have been a part of for the last few weeks. So we've been coming up with our solution for the finance industry to try and become more sustainable, which is pretty tricky because we've been talking to some mentors from banks about it, and every time we come up with something, they're like, what do the banks get out of it?
We all like to do our sort of recycling, eat less meat, fly less, cycle everywhere, but I don't know, I think it can be quite hard when you feel like you're doing all these sort of tiny small actions, and the news that you're constantly fed is just sort of more and more depressing.
I'm working on the development of a project to help us, or as this Western modern post-industrial civilization, reconnect with our roots and not look right nor to the left but look down, and to recover our ancestral knowledge. And in order to do this, we need to gather indigenous community voices to design this system where we can go and remember and live it as an experience, to recover this wisdom which is basically inside all of us.